It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is the third of our 3 clip shows as we, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of preparing for a 1-week solidarity mission to Israel, going to show support for the people in the land of Israel at a very difficult time for them. The economy since October 7th there has really suffered. When you have a country of 9 million people and you call up 1 million, mobilize them into the reserves, it's difficult to find people who work the jobs that you need to work to support the economy. And especially as Israel does, an economy that's so dependent on tourism. So we, again, as you're watching this, we are preparing, or we are already home, God willing, by the time you're watching this. As we're recording this, we are making final preparations to leave for Israel. We're leaving in less than 72 hours as I'm recording this, and we will be on our way to Israel for the 4th time, and we thank our partners at Lipkin Tours for that. Coming up before the end of the program, we'll tell you how you can join us in Israel next spring, the spring of 2025. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem, that things will be calm enough and secure enough for this tour by then. This 1-week mission we'll be telling you about in the weeks ahead. Once we're back here in the Ozarks, we can talk about what we've seen, show you video that we've taken, but many of the sites that would be on our regular tour are off limits at the moment because they're in close proximity to Lebanon and Syria and within range of rockets from Hezbollah, RPGs, and so forth. The areas we'll be confined to are in secure regions in the central and the south of Israel. And again, our main goal, besides showing support for Israel, is to see what is happening there with our own eyes, without the filter of the Western media, which, in our experience, has not matched what we've seen when we're in country. So what we saw in 2019, as we show you excerpts from our travelogumentary, which is available, by the way, at our store, gilberthouse.org/store. This is our Wars of the Gods Volume 2 video from our 2019 visit with Pastor Carl Gallups and Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat. They paid a visit to one of the groups that is very active in promoting the idea of the construction of a 3rd temple. And what they found out about this mission was, frankly, shocking.
It's sometimes said as a joke, but it's really true. You can't dig anywhere in Israel without hitting archaeology. They've just uncovered a 6,000-year-old city north of Tel Aviv because they're building a new road junction. But they're all the time running into the same issue in Jerusalem. Anytime somebody tries to dig a garden, they're digging up bits of pottery and other stuff. And we always find it fascinating to go into the city of David, and especially down into the tunnels alongside the Western Wall. Recently, a new discovery of a road that was used by pilgrims to come to Jerusalem to bring tithes and offerings to attend the festivals was discovered. That's always a political hot potato when you're digging underneath the Temple Mount, underneath the city of David. There are people out there who don't like to demonstrate any connection between the Jews and the Temple Mount.
No, not at all. And it's quite an experience to walk through these tunnels. They're the tunnels of Hezekiah. And it gives you an idea of, first of all, what it was like for them to construct it. That they actually met in the middle. Mm-hmm. Still amazes me. How do you know what direction you are digging when you're underground?
Not like you can orient with the stars.
No. So it's possible that they had some sort of compass, but they did meet in the middle, and you can walk through these tunnels today. They are now nicely lit for you, but back in the day you would have had to carry a torch through, which would have made them really, really creepy because you would have only had that tiny light around you. Now imagine being in a large group and using these to escape.
We're in the tunnels underneath the Western Wall here in Jerusalem. We've seen some amazing sights here. Huge, huge stones in the foundation of the Western Wall, as big as, well, we measured it last year at estimated about 75 feet long, about 8 feet tall, and probably 4 feet deep. The largest of the stones. Here now we're entering the watercourse, the Hasmoneans, underneath the city. It's an amazing thing, and seeing what's been built under here now, including a synagogue and, of course, stations for tour guides, is just amazing. It's an amazing combination of the modern and the very, very old, the very ancient.
Well, after we got through the tunnels, you're hearing paper rattling because I'm turning my paper over, my notes. Zev and Carl had a conversation with people from the Temple Institute at about the same time that the rest of us were going through the demonstration and the film at the Temple Institute itself. We learned a lot about the politics behind the Temple Institute.
Yes. The construction of the third temple is not the goal. It's really the means by which well-meaning Christians in the West and in China are persuaded to donate.
It was a learning experience.
It was. And what Rabbi Zev says, I think, makes a lot of sense. The average Israeli, religious or non-religious, really doesn't want a third temple. They said, look, we don't do that anymore. That's why we have synagogues. And we know that if a third temple were to be built, it would be World War III, and we would just rather live in peace.
It would require sacrifices to be reinstated.
Yes.
And right now, the mention of doing a sacrifice during Passover causes major political upheaval.
Right.
This pretty much wrapped up our time in Israel. So we had our farewell dinner, which is always filled with joy, and we all reminisce and we share pictures back and forth, and we thank our guides, and of course we thank Aaron Lipkin, because the next day we all go to our homes or to Jordan.
Yes.
This year the tour extension was into Jordan, and our very first stop, once we made it through the customs, and trust me, it takes a while to go through those customs, but it's worth it, we went to Mount Nebo.
This is an amazing place, not only because this is where Moses got his only look at the Holy Land, but because this year we had learned since our tour in 2018 that there's a specific site visible from Mount Nebo that is very important to this whole narrative.
Absolutely. But before we get to that, I want you to explain what the name Nebo means.
It's a reference to the Mesopotamian god of wisdom, Nabu. Not quite sure why that place, that mountain, was given that name, because there's, as far as I know, no documentation that he was ever worshipped that far west. This was an entity that was pretty much worshipped by the Eastern Amorites, people in Babylon and thereabouts. In fact, Nabonidus, Nebuchadnezzar,
yes, exactly,
Nebuzaradan, others have that name as the theophoric element in their names, the god name as part of their name. So he was an important entity.
He is the son of Marduk.
Okay, the son of Marduk, who was the chief god of the city of Babylon and the king of the pantheon of the Eastern Amorites.
Exactly. So again, we have the Lord taking back territory. He is going directly to the homes of these gods, going to their mounts of assembly and taking it back and claiming it as his own, because the entire earth is his.
Yes. The valley below Mount Nebo was the plains of Moab, where the Israelites camped after defeating Og of Bashan in the north.
So we go from Gilgal Rephaim, in a way, to where you and I were with our group near Petra.
Right, and this is significant because this area east of the Jordan River was occupied by tribes identified as Rephaim in the days of Abraham. These areas were known to be occupied by those Rephaim tribes, and by the time of Moses, the Rephaim were considered the spirits of the mighty men who were of old, the dead kings. They were venerated by the Canaanites around ancient Israel, and even the Israelites were drawn into this worship when they were on the plains of Moab. That's why God sent a plague that killed 24,000 Israelites. They were worshiping the Baal of Peor, who I showed in Last Clash of the Titans was a god of the underworld. Well, Ezekiel in chapter 39, in his prophecy of the war of Gog and Magog, has it revealed to him by God that the valley of the travelers east of the sea is where God will bury the hordes of Magog. The travelers in that context are the spirits of the dead, the spirits of the Rephaim who cross over. They travel from one plane of existence to another. They are referred to specifically as travelers in Canaanite texts called the Rephaim texts. Those are from about the time of the Judges in the ancient kingdom of Ugarit.
And when you say travelers, you're talking about the Avarim.
Yes. And Avarim is also the name applied to Mount Nebo. God told Moses, climb this mountain of the Avarim, climb this mountain of the travelers. This is significant because from Mount Nebo, the mountain of the travelers, you can see the valley of the travelers below where this end times war of Gog and Magog, the Battle of Armageddon, the church...
The Har Moed.
Yes, God's Mount of Assembly. You see the whole world coming against Jerusalem.
And possibly humans that are inhabited by demons.
Exactly right. And that's why the travelers, who in those Rephaim texts are called warriors of Baal, will be there at that battlefield and they will be destroyed. God says it will block the travelers. At the last trump, we are raised incorruptible. We are resurrected into new bodies. They will be blocked.
Yes, they will not rise. The other interesting thing, you mentioned the snakes. The other interesting thing about Mount Nebo is that very large sculpture, which dominates that area. It's sometimes referred to as Nehushtan. That's another name given to Dumuzi.
Really? Dumuzi or Tammuz in the Bible?
Yes. There is a poem where when he is taken, seized, when Inanna rises from Hades, when she comes back from Tartarus, the underworld, she has to find someone to take her place. She finds the whole world crying and weeping because she is dead, quote unquote. And by the way, she arose after 3 days. Yeah, well, she finds her husband, Dumuzi, the shepherd king, sitting on her throne and doesn't seem at all sad. In fact, he's wearing all of her royal robes and crown and the whole getup. He's happy. Until
she says to the demons who followed her out of the underworld, okay, take him.
Take him. And there is one poem that says that he pleads to have his feet and hands turned into that of a snake. Now, the word that snakes don't have feet and hands. I believe he was asking to be turned into a dragon.
Ah, yes.
Nehushtan is a flying, fiery serpent.
A phrase we see in the Bible.
Dragon.
Nachashim seraphim.
Yes, because it's based on that idea of serpent, the Tan part, and also the Nakash.
Fascinating stuff that's still there on the summit of Mount Nebo.
Well, the relationship between the ancient goddess Inanna and her husband, the shepherd god Dumuzi, is reflected in a number of other mythologies throughout the ancient world, Aphrodite and Adonis, for one, which is not a surprise, as scholars have come to learn over the last 100 years and really over the last 80 years or so, is that the mythology or the religion of ancient Greece and Rome comes right out of Mesopotamia. It's the same story, just with different names and slightly different details, but it's all fake news versions of what's in the Bible, which is why we pay attention to these things. Well, coming up, we will show you the view from Mount Nebo, where Moses got his only look at the Holy Land. But you probably didn't know that from there you can see the site of ancient Sodom. That's straight ahead on Unraveling Revelation. Summer reading season is just around the corner. We want to help you get ready.
You can buy fiction, you can buy nonfiction through the Gilbert House store, whichever you want. All of our books are 40% off. 40%.
That includes all 8 novels of the Red Wing saga.
Book 9 is coming, probably early summer.
My 2 novels, and then, of course, all of our nonfiction stuff, including our most recent books, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, The Second Coming of Saturn, and Veneration, a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim.
April and May, you get 62 days.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
61. April only has 30.
Regardless, through the end of May, 40% off on all of our books at the Gilbert House store. Available only online. Go to gilberthouse.org/store. You'll find all the prices slashed on our books, 40% off, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert. At our store, not only do you find our books and DVDs, but you find links to 2 of our partners will help keep your head clear and your body healthy. We're talking about coffee and 100% GMO-free food. Kevlar Joe's Coffee has developed 3 blends for us. Amazing Grace, which is cookies and cream. Snarling Dachshund, in honor of the late Sam T. Dachshund, a very smooth Sumatran blend of coffee. And Bunker Buster, a bold Colombian. And then a link to Simply Clean Foods. Long-term storage food. It is freeze-dried, but it is for everyday cooking, and it's 100% GMO-free. Click the links at gilberthouse.org/store. We recommend both of those, Kevlar Joe's Coffee and Simply Clean Foods. Again, gilberthouse.org/store. Now, what did Moses see from Mount Nebo, and why was it called the Mountain of the Travelers? Yes, a term used by Ezekiel in connection with the war of Gog and Magog. Is it connected to ancient Sodom?
Well, the other interesting thing about Mount Nebo, yes, was an archaeological site that we only learned about after last year's tour. And this is a site that's been excavated by Trinity Southwest University under the direction of Dr. Stephen Collins for the last 15 seasons. And that is called Tal El Hammam.
Because the evidence is very good that is the site of biblical Sodom. Biblical Sodom destroyed roughly 1750 to 1800 BC when Abraham was here in the Holy Land. Because we see the well-watered plain behind us, the green area there, that was what Lot saw when he looked up. Looked toward the east. Looking up means looking toward the east. Saw that the area was good, fertile, well-watered. That's the area he chose. And Sodom, as Wael pointed out, is on that hill that overlooks the valley. It controls the valley. In that period of history, that was the most important city in the Levant, which is Syria, Lebanon, Canaan, Palestine, Israel. That is the Levant. It was the most important city south of Hatzor, which is near the Sea of Galilee. It was important enough that kings came all the way from modern-day Iran, Persia. The king of Elam led the coalition that crossed Mesopotamia, came down from the north to attack that city there. Oh, wow. It was important. And remember, on their way down, they had to defeat tribes identified as Rephaim. So in the days of Abraham, the Rephaim still occupied the Jordan River Valley. By the time Moses and the Israelites arrived, more than 200 years later, only Og of Bashan, the Golan Heights, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. And I believe that's why he was the first target. Numbers 25, verse 1, when Israel lived in Shittim, down here, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor. Peor, I explained in my book, Last Clash of the Titans, is based on a root that means cleft or gap or opening. In the context of the spirits of the dead, probably means entrance to the netherworld, a god of the dead. They yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor, lord of the opening to the underworld, and ate sacrifices offered to the dead. That's what made God angry. They provoked the Lord to anger with their deeds, and a plague broke out among them. And the book of Numbers says 24,000 died because of this plague. Now, 2 other interesting things here. Ruins of the Travelers. When I interviewed the scientific director for the dig at Tal El Hammam, Sodom, he said that there are more dolmens gathered around the base of the city than anywhere else in the Jordan River Valley. And the Jordan Valley, the east side, Rephaim territory, has more dolmens concentrated than anywhere else on earth. There are 500 still standing down there. He said there used to be 1,500. I asked him, how are they oriented? Are they oriented according to the stars, north, south, constellation, equinox, solstice? He said, no, we think they're all oriented to face what we believe is the temple in Sodom. What was worshipped? Who was worshipped there? Why was Yahweh provoked to destroy that city? It was more than just going after strange flesh. And when Moses and the Israelites arrived here around 1400 BC, some 300 years, 400 years after the destruction of the city, they saw the ruins up on the hill and 1,500 dolmens, funerary monuments, 2 big slabs of stone with a slab across the top, left behind, the ruins of the travelers. And Moses and the Israelites looked up and saw that. and so named the place. I believe it's down here. And I think there's one final note. Oh yes, this is just an interesting, Sharon pointed this out once. There's the interesting reference in Jude, where Jude references, of course, the angels who kept not their first estate, did not remain within their position of authority, left their proper dwelling, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities likewise indulged in sexual immorality. He says, for some reason the screen is going dark, I guess it's overheating. In like manner, these people also, referring to people in the first century now who were disobedient, relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." He was disputing for the body of Moses. We know from the Old Testament that Moses was buried somewhere in the plains of Moab, but the grave has not been found. Even in the times of the Old Testament, no one knew where it was. But the interesting thing, and this was such a brilliant observation, did Satan believe that he had a right to the body of Moses because Moses was buried in the valley of the travelers east of the sea, the valley of the spirits of the Rephaim?
A fascinating thing that, again, ties together our search for the Rephaim to the battle for God's holy mountain.
The other interesting thing about the behavior in Sodom, it was very similar to the behavior of the acolytes listed in the poetry for Inanna.
Transvestites, transgender.
They were almost omnivores when it came to sex. Omnisexual.
Breaking down all of the barriers, the taboos that God established with Moses on Sinai.
Because that was the way that the Titans, the kings of old, the Rephaim, behaved. Remember in the Bible that we are told the dimensions of Og's bed. That's not his bed where he slept. That was a ritualistic sex rite bed.
Yes.
For behaving in the same way that the Titans, the gods of old, the Rephaim, behaved. This was a way to incubate the god.
We know this from a text found at the Entemenanke, which is Marduk's temple in ancient Babylon, that the dimensions of the bed of Og were exactly the same, 4 cubits by 6 cubits. So Og wasn't necessarily a physical giant, but Moses was connecting him to the wicked occult system of Babylon.
Exactly. And so we have that same activity taking place in Sodom. They were trying to essentially rebuild Babylon by their behavior.
Oh.
And Og may have been trying to do something similar.
You know, that might also have been one of the reasons that the kings felt compelled to march all the way from Mesopotamia to put down this upstart kingdom just east of the Dead Sea.
Exactly, because we don't want his God outdoing our gods.
Yeah. And they've made alliances with these Rephaim tribes along the King's Highway, interrupting the flow of trade between Egypt and Mesopotamia as well. But if this timing is correct, about 1750 BC, give or take, then that means that Amraphel of Shinar might actually have been Hammurabi the Great.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Because he wanted to make Babylon great again.
Exactly. Yes. Well, who knew that when we stood on Mount Nebo, we would be perceiving all of this? But we were looking at what Moses saw. And here's another interesting thing about that. The transfiguration, which took place on Mount Hermon, another one of the enemy's strongholds. It's where the Watchers came down. When Jesus transfigured there, he had 2 individuals with him that essentially had been resurrected.
Elijah and Moses.
Exactly. So he was signaling to Satan and everybody else, Moses, who's buried somewhere there, and you think you've got control of his body, guess what? You don't. He's coming back, but you're not.
Exactly. You're still dead.
You're still dead.
We're here at Wadi Rum in Jordan, which is the Red Desert. It's a place that looks like a lunar landscape or a Martian landscape, which is appropriate because the film The Martian was filmed here, as well as a number of other Hollywood productions. In fact, one film just opening very recently. It is eye-opening when you consider that this is probably similar to what Moses and the Israelites had to see for 40 years as they wandered in the desert. It's not surprising that they began to complain after a very short while when you see the arid landscape that we'll experience here in just a few minutes.
The tour through Wadi Rum, the Jeep drive through the desert, was well worth seeing. Historically speaking, it gives you an appreciation of why the Israelites might have complained about their time in the desert, because really there's not much there.
It's sort of like being on Mars,
which Hollywood is taking advantage of for several major film productions. Oh, well, we could just colorize everything, or now let's just go shoot it in Jordan. We don't have to colorize it much. It does look like Mars.
It's red. It's why the area is called Edom.
Right. We had a lot of fun there. It was fascinating for me. I've seen it last year. You didn't make the tour into the desert last year, but this year you did. And because your Red Wing Saga series will eventually take one of your protagonists into that part of the world, because that's where T.E. Lawrence of Arabia,
yes, exactly,
rallied the Arab tribes against the Ottoman Empire.
Exactly. And of course, I'll have one of my future heroes working with Lawrence of Arabia, because he also represented the Palestine Exploration Fund.
Yes. Archaeologists who just happened to report back to the
military, and the Foreign Office.
But while we were there, we did get to experience Bedouin tea.
It was delicious.
Oh, flavored with cardamom and other spices. Delicious.
Yes, and the amazing Taylor Joseph, who did most of the film work in this documentary. He got to have his own personal hat.
Oh, yeah. Our tour guide on the Jordan side, YL, fitted him out, and this was absolutely perfect. Taylor looked really good in it too.
You know what? It suits him.
It does. We brought one home for Tom Horn. We haven't seen him wear it yet. I wonder
No,
why.
we haven't. I'm really disappointed in that. We also took one to our friend Juan when we were touring the UK, and he did wear his. He looked great in it.
Yes, not bad for a Scottish Spaniard.
I know. We had a lot of fun while we were there. And by the way, when we were in Wadi Rum, this really surprised me. A couple of things did. First of all, one, I was a little surprised to see that the Bedouins all had cell phones. In fact, there was a little charging station.
Yes.
Set into carved into the rock.
So it seemed.
But you also saw petroglyphs that I think must be very, very old.
That area was heavily traveled by the nomads back in the day. Our 2020 tour of Israel will include a visit to the Negev, which is the desert south of Israel, and we'll see some of the sites there, which date back to the Chalcolithic, but also Nabatean sites as well. A lot of people travel through that area. Even as desolate and arid as it is, that area has been occupied for millennia.
Fascinating stuff, and we look forward to returning to Israel next spring, March 25th through April 3rd of 2025. Join us with our special guests, Timothy Alberino, Dr. Judd Burton, and Doug Van Dorn. Information is available at our website, gilberthouse.org/travel. gilberthouse.org/travel. There's a link there to the Lipkin Tours website where you can register. Again, March 25th through April 3rd of 2025. We're heading back to Israel, and we pray we see you in the Holy Land. Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at unravelingrevelation.tv and gilberthouse.org. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.